Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. It's estimated that 1 billion people worldwide are deficient in vitamin D3. Today, Bob and Rollie discuss the sunshine vitamin and its importance for your health. They identify some of the main causes of vitamin D deficiency and what tests you need to take to find out if your D levels are low. They also share some great ways to naturally increase vitamin D in the body so you can bolster your immune system, express genetics accurately, and increase energy. So sit back, relax, and get ready to live forever young.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live Forever Young Radio. I'm Bob, and I'm here with Rollie today. Welcome, Rollie.
Hey, Bobo.
So you have your Rays hat on again. That's great. Well, people will be getting out in the sun more now that the spring is here.
Yes.
Not so much at Tropicana Field where the Rays play because it has a dome.
Right.
But we're talking about vitamin D, which is the sunshine vitamin.
Yep.
And now that the spring is here, the 1st of April, first part of April, is going to be a chance for people to be in the sun more and to be able to get more sunlight, which helps to make vitamin D. So
exactly.
Which is very important because we know that a little more than 50% of the people in the United States are actually low in vitamin D. And we also know from recent studies related to COVID that 80% of the people that had to come to the hospital regarding COVID were low in vitamin D.
Right. Yeah, I remember hearing the studies saying that before they had any vaccine or really any way to treat it, they were finding because so many people that came in with really bad symptoms and were doing really bad had very low D levels. One of the first things they said to do is increase the D levels to build your to build yourself up.
Yeah, and we'll talk later about how it helps with the immune system.
Right. Sure.
But first, people ask, what is it? What kind of symptoms would I have if I was low in vitamin D? And this is kind of nebulous because you could have some of these symptoms and it could mean you're low in vitamin D, but it could also mean something else.
Right.
But some of those symptoms are like, having achy muscles, right? And painful bones.
Right. I heard vitamin D is real important for bone health, so that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also fatigue, and we've seen that at Boomers Forever Young. We've noticed the issue with fatigue. I remember a story of one woman who had called us, and she was so fatigued she couldn't leave the house. She couldn't get up off the couch. And we helped her with a lot of different nutrition products, and she would not go and get her vitamin D level checked.
Right.
And so she was home. And we kept after her, and about a year later, she finally went and got it checked, and it was below 20, which is way too low.
Well, I remembered she called and she said, hey, doesn't seem like I'm feeling any more energy after using the product for a while. And then that's when we really got on about having to get that checked and come to find.
Exactly. So she was very, very low, and so it was at that point she agreed to start taking vitamin D3 in pill form. And within a week's time, she had her energy back and called us to tell us thank you. And she was going out dancing with her friends that night.
I remember that. They were doing a celebratory dance night. It was a girls' night out.
That was a few years ago.
That was.
But that was a very, that really hit home how important that is.
Yeah, it was one of the things that, you don't hear a lot. You hear about like they enrich milk with vitamin D, and they try to put vitamin D in supplements. But what most people don't understand is how do I get deficient in the first place? And a lot of that comes from, as humans, we used to spend a lot more time outside.
Yep.
And so when we spend time outside, you would get vitamin D that naturally occurs when the skin gets hit by the sun. And so, now that we've moved to more of an inside lifestyle where most people work inside and spend more time inside with video games and TV, unfortunately, the D levels can drop. And then, with sunscreen and things that people use to avoid getting cancer because of UV rays, it actually might cause more issues because you don't get enough D3 to maybe help with keep that disease from coming, So there's, It's like a catch-22. So the what do we do? right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we get our
Yeah.
D3 up?
Yeah, and so the thing about the sunlight is, when the sun hits your skin, it actually interacts with cholesterol and that makes a pre-vitamin D, then vitamin D, and that vitamin D gets stored and then used as it's needed. And this is very good because it's that type of vitamin D that you get from the sunlight is self-regulatory. You end up always having enough if you have enough sunlight,
Right.
but not too much because it will keep storing it instead of releasing it, right? But if you're not going to be someone that's going to be in the sun, which is 99% of the people,
Right.
You have a couple of choices. You can eat lots of food that has vitamin D in it, like mackerel and sardines, that
Right.
kind of thing, cod liver oil. Right? There are also plants that have vitamin D, but it's not vitamin D3. It's actually vitamin D2 is what's in the plant sources, and it's only about 1/5 as absorbable and usable as the form that would come from animal sources.
Okay.
And of course with supplements,
Yeah.
the most of the supplements are coming from animal sources,
Right.
but you can get vitamin D that's coming from plant sources. You just need to use more of it so that you end up getting enough.
Gotcha.
But that's kind of the whole situation that we find ourselves in here in 2021 is more than half the people are deficient because we're not in the sun anymore. And so obviously more than half of the population is not taking in enough food with vitamin D
And
or
certainly
the
not
right
supplements.
And so they end up with these different symptoms, including one that you can be pretty sure you need to check your vitamin D right away is if your head is always sweating.
Really?
Yeah, that. And also if you have trouble with wounds that are healing, you cut your hand, you cut your foot, so having a really hard time healing. One of the reasons could be that you're low in vitamin D.
And I've heard that it's really good for your brain health, vitamin D.
Yeah,
It's
really good for your brain health, and it's also really good for your immune system because if you get recurring infections, it could be that the reason is you're low in vitamin D. And since half the people are, it's a very good thing to check on right away.
Really?
And you really...
It makes sense,
Yeah, and there's a lot of other good reasons to know your vitamin D. Low vitamin D it leads to a higher incidence of cardiovascular disease,
Right.
and also higher incidence of cancer and high blood pressure, autoimmune diseases, and on and on. Even, the whole issue of vitamin D stimulating your genes for expression.
Right, we talked about that. The vitamin D does a really special role in the replication of the DNA.
It's in the expression, and so when
the expression of the DNA, sorry.
And so your DNA holds the code for making all your proteins, which is what humans are. We're protein-making machines.
That's right.
But the code is in your DNA, primarily in your nucleus, and it's kind of wrapped up and clothed in a sheath, and different stimulants will hit that sheath and splay open a spot where the portion of the gene that has the code that you need can be copied. So your RNA then copies it and comes out from the nucleus into the cell and creates the proteins, right?
That's
and
pretty
vitamin D, after it gets converted into a hormone, it's a steroid hormone, gets converted with your liver and your kidneys, and that form, the hormone form, is stimulating your genetic expression. And some studies show that it's almost 25% of the entirety of your genetic expression comes from the steroid hormone that was once vitamin D.
Wow.
Okay.
So basically, that if you're having issues related to genetic expression, sometimes people, when they get older, they have a hard time healing. They have a hard time, like you said, with the immune system. It might have a lot to do with the role that plays in expressing the DNA. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so the other thing is, we know that there are certain issues with macular degeneration that look to be associated with vitamin D.
Right, that's eye health, right?
Yeah. And there's also been evidence in many, many studies in its relationship to autism. These are all the reasons why you would want to pay attention.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, no,
and get your blood test done.
Well, that would make sense. You know, you said the thing about autism. The rate of autism has gone up in recent years.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's a really clear correlation. If half the people in America, including children, are deficient in D3,
yeah.
So the rise of autism goes.
Yeah. And so there's only one way to know if you're deficient in D3, because these symptoms we talked about could be from that, but could be from other things. So
Right.
you have to get a blood test to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you find out, your level is going to be somewhere between, say, 15 and 100.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the range that they will have at the lab test will say 20 to 100, but 20 is very, very low.
I was going to say, that's still low.
The studies are showing that if you want to have that full genetic expression, you need to have your level at 50 at a minimum.
Okay.
And ideally between 50 and 70, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you also want to be careful not to have too much, because, you know, sometimes if people are very low, their doctor will give them 50,000 international units to quickly get their level up.
I talked to a lady like that on the phone.
Yeah, and some people will think, oh, that's a good idea. I'll take that much every day and more is better. But it's not, because vitamin D has a critical role in the absorption of calcium and magnesium,
Right.
and the regulation of those minerals in your blood. And if your vitamin D goes way, way, way up past 100, 120, now you're going to have trouble with regulating minerals, and you don't want that, because too much calcium in your blood is a big problem. And so more is not necessarily better. Once you get to a certain point where your level's up to about 70, you want to try to keep it there. And depending on who you are, how much you weigh, you might need varying amounts. And that's just the way that it goes. And
the test for the vitamin D, you have to actually ask for it, right? That's not in your normal panel anymore.
Most of the time, if you go to your doctor for a blood test, they're not going to check your vitamin D. So you can simply ask for it. Sometimes it comes with it if you ask. Sometimes you might have to pay a little bit more out of your own pocket, but it's well worth it. Definitely. Based on all the things we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like we said, with all the research about vitamin D that the COVID pandemic has brought out,
right,
and how important it is for not just immune system but the whole body. It needs to be repeated. Definitely get your levels checked. Too low isn't good, and too high isn't good either. So
you want to get your level checked, and then if you are low and you need supplementation, then you can get vitamin D. You can call us if you want, and
right,
we can get it for you from the Boomers Forever Young Nutrition Company.
Yeah, ours is a very, very clean source.
And it will definitely raise your levels. And then you can get it checked again, say 3, 4, 5 months later, just to make sure it hasn't gone too high.
Right.
And then if you find your sweet spot, you'll know exactly how much to take for yourself.
Right, but everybody's different in that respect, depending on where they're living, how much they get outside. So
and their age.
That too.
Their
age is important, a factor in that, right?
Older you are, the less trouble you have absorbing it. And
you mean the more trouble?
Yeah, the more trouble you have absorbing it.
Yeah.
And also, the darker your skin is, the more trouble you have making vitamin D from sunlight.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's something to remember. So, yeah, if you guys want to have any questions, we'll have information about this in the blog on liveforeveryoungradio.com. And if you want to give us a call, maybe get an idea of what we have, it would be 1-800-861-4609. But at the same time, what I was thinking about as we were talking about this is how many people, like just think about 50% of America is low in this. That's a staggering number. I think it's like a couple.
200 million people
Yeah.
in the United States.
So at
and they
least
say
100
that
million.
they say worldwide, it's over 2 billion people worldwide that are deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah, so there's no reason for it.
So this is a study that came out, Raleigh, just recently, like last week, was announced, where these very high-level researchers, medical doctors, were doing a study about vitamin D and cancer. And there was a woman who headed up the study from Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston.
Okay.
And they reported this study in a prestigious medical journal. And what they found was that people that got cancer and they had low levels of vitamin D were far more likely to die of cancer than people that had the higher levels.
Wow.
And they concluded through an extrapolation at the end of the study that if in the United States every person over the age of 50 simply took 1,000 international units of vitamin D per day, which is a fairly low amount.
Yeah, that's not a ton, but it's better than nothing.
That if they did that, it would save 78,000 deaths per year in the United States from cancer.
Wow.
Okay.
So when did they? Wait, when was a couple? You said about a week or two ago that came out.
Yeah, it came out at the last part of March 2021. The study was released.
Wow. And so what that is another correlation between another disease, like COVID and cancer. The lower your D, the less your chances is of making it.
That's correct.
That
was the bottom line.
Pretty strong evidence.
And it was the people that were involved in the study were astounded. They had no idea it was that much of a relationship. And they quickly did this extrapolation. They were like, oh my God, we could actually save at least 78,000 lives.
It begs the question why they don't have D3 on every blood test that you take as a normal thing.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
And over time, that maybe
they'll
happen.
change it.
Enough evidence continues to come.
Mm-hmm.
There are studies being done on vitamin D all over the world. Every day, more than 200 studies are released every single day on the benefits of vitamin D and the correlations between various health issues.
No wonder why we're learning so much more about it. That's great.
And so, Raleigh, I think that's pretty much it for today. That's the quick overview of vitamin D.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more to it, but the things that really affected and the things that we hear a lot of are what we always bring up. And again, you can always go get more information. We'll have links for you on liveforeveryoungradio.com. And don't hesitate to check out some other videos where we talk about the same type of thing, just with different types of vitamins. So take a look. So
thank you, everybody, and for watching and listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Thank you, Raleigh, for being here with us today.
Thanks, Bob.
We'll see you all on the next video.
Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Check us out at liveforeveryoungradio.com.